and welcome to Tuesday Newsday!
Look at the blade of my sword. Look at this potato.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Virtual Reality Show!
Now kiss.
You have insufficient evidence.
Your Honor, objection. Insufficient evidence. My client said he was dead ass.
Taking 3 deep breaths. I instruct to take your breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. I want you to picture that you're floating safely above the earth.
Link start! Virtual reality. A canvas for anything and everything. To the uninitiated, it appears to be a simple medium for playing games, where one straps a screen to their face and plays Call of Duty in 3D. But there is so much more to virtual reality. With almost no limits, it's much more than just a video game. It's a medium for storytelling. It allows us to work in a private environment or even work collaboratively. It spawned in a new era of content creation on multiple avenues, from virtual YouTubers to complete movies being made in VR. There are, of course, games you can play too, but many people make their living off of virtual reality, from world creators to YouTubers. I am definitely no stranger to the virtual world, having spent over 1,000 hours in Steam VR alone. And all this began when I had spent a lot of hard-earned money on the most affordable headset in the market at the time, the first Oculus Quest. With it, I opened up a door to many hours within the virtual world. I made friends years ago in VR chat that I still talk to today. I've even had numerous memorable experiences, from sitting around in a virtual penthouse with friends, to wandering the cold mountains of Skyrim. There were even times in college where I used the Oculus Quest 2 to work on essays in private. I spent so many hours in all these virtual spaces that I'm glad to have purchased that original Oculus Quest back in 2020. Now, 2 years later, the things that you could do in virtual reality have grown exponentially. There's so much that we could do and explore, but we cannot truly experience these things without the headsets themselves. And so, we talk about the devices themselves. The hardware that acts as a doorway into virtual reality. For beginners of VR, I highly recommend the Meta Quest 2. It's currently what I've been using, and I've had it for almost as long as the headset's been out. For me, it's been a very reliable headset, with very little maintenance needed. In 2021, I bought the 256GB version of the Quest 2 for $400. I've both played standalone and tethered to PC on the headset, and I can say that my experience has almost been perfect. I've even managed to add third-party apps and games through SideQuest, a sideloader for the Quest and Quest 2. I've even added a few games through Meta's own App Lab, which allows developers to bypass the Oculus Store's very strict requirements. Of course, the Meta Quest 2 isn't the only standalone headset on the market right now. There is also the Pico Neo 3, meant to act as a competitor to the Quest. Both headsets have very similar specs and have similar prices. Something to note, the Quest's library is much larger than the Neo's, and is something to consider. Another thing to note is that at the time of this video, Meta is currently requiring you to log in via a Facebook account. However, Meta is removing this requirement at some point this month in favor of a Meta account. If you already have a PC capable of running virtual reality games, there are high-end options available to you. The most popular PC VR headset on the market is the Valve Index. The Valve Index has a lower resolution than the Meta Quest 2, with a resolution of 1440 by 1600 pixels per eye, compared to the Quest 2 1832 by 1920 pixels per eye. However, the Index has a much higher native refresh rate than the Quest 2, meaning that images will come through much more smoothly than the Quest 2. Along with that, the Valve Index has special controllers that allow for finger tracking. The downside to the Valve Index is that it's not standalone like the Quest 2 or the Neo 3. The headset tracking method is also quite different from the Quest 2 and Neo 3. While the Quest and Neo 3 use inside-out tracking, which is using cameras inside the headset in order to track your arms and the environment around you, the Valve Index uses space stations, which are mounted on walls or even your ceiling that track your movement. The Valve Index is the daily driver of many content creators and even ordinary users. Yet, there are also other headsets out there that are much more expensive and advanced in technology, which I may talk about in a later video. For beginners and newcomers to VR, however, I would personally recommend sticking to one of these 3 headsets, as these are the best 3 options that you can purchase today. There is something very important that I should note to all new VR headset owners, and that's never ever expose your headset to direct sunlight. There is a startling amount of people that believe that headsets, especially standalone headsets, can be used outside or be exposed to direct sunlight. This isn't the case at all. Exposing your headset to sunlight can result in the lenses bending the light in a way that will absolutely destroy your display. I've even heard reports of this happening when the headset's been exposed to direct sunlight for even just a few seconds. Anyways, with that warning out of the way, I think we need to talk about what most people actually see on YouTube and other websites. What entices someone to actually use virtual reality. Now, we come to the bread and butter of this video. Of course, VR headsets are what we need to take our first steps into virtual reality. However, without things for us to actually do, there wouldn't be much of a point in us using the headsets in the first place. A lot of the software I will be talking about in this video are games, and that's because that's where I have most of my experience in when it comes to actually using VR. Of course, I'll also talk about certain applications with potential productive uses, but my personal experience with these apps is very limited compared to other software. I will also be mostly talking about apps that I have had personal experience in using. There are 2 majorly used platforms when it comes to VR software. Steam VR, which is PC VR exclusive, and Oculus, which is the storefront for Meta headset-based software. The Oculus platform has both PC VR and Quest-only standalone titles. I have titles on both platforms since my personal VR headset is a Meta Quest 2. To begin with, I'm going to talk about a software that narrows the gap between standalone and PC, with potential productive applications. Virtual Desktop is an app created by Guy Godin, though I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, which allows an Oculus Quest to connect remotely to your PC through a wireless network. This is an amazing way to enable yourself to do all sorts of things, including browsing the web on your computer and running your PC's productivity software and streaming it directly to your headset. Along with this, if your PC is strong enough to run VR games, you can wirelessly play VR using that same connection. You can do all sorts of things to tweak your settings in Virtual Desktop to make things run as smoothly as possible. There's even support to connect your headset to a cloud gaming PC, if you don't have your own VR-ready PC. There is also a free alternative to Virtual Desktop that I have never personally used called Airlight VR, or ALVR for short, and that accomplishes a similar function to Virtual Desktop. However, you should note that both Virtual Desktop and ALVR require a very strong wireless setup. I may show off my own setup for this in a future video to help you all kind of get an understanding as to what you actually need. There are also multiple games that appear on both the standalone Quest Store and on PC VR. The most notable of these, in my opinion, is VR Chat, a social app that allows you to be who you want and go basically wherever you want. I spent many hours in VR Chat just switching between new avatars with friends or world hopping. You can play literally Among Us in VR, Cards Against Humanity, Battle Discs, or just explore places to chill out in. VR Chat is pretty much, in my opinion, the best representation of a true metaverse. The best part about VR Chat is that it is completely free and supports even desktop play. That means even if you don't have a VR headset, you can still download it right now via the Steam Store and play it in desktop mode. One of my favorite VR games so far is definitely the classic Pavlov VR, which is a first-person shooter in, well, VR. Pavlov has often been equated to the CSGO or Call of Duty of virtual reality, and with good reason. In it, of course, you have to shoot at people and take cover when they shoot back, and you gotta reload your guns yourself. There is no pushing a button and just waiting for an animation to play. Your reload speed depends on you and your own skill. For those of you that play exclusively on Quest 2, the makers behind Pavlov have made a free mobile version, well, mobile I say loosely, called Pavlov Shack. While not as feature complete as the PC VR version of Pavlov, a lot of features and game modes are still present in Pavlov Shack. Of course, shooting guns in VR can be really fun. However, for those with tastes in fantasy, you might enjoy Blade and Sorcery. Blade and Sorcery is a game where you can use weapons and magic of all kinds to defeat your enemies. I admit I don't have this game myself, but I've heard nothing but universal praise for this game. Plus, Blade and Sorcery is both on Quest 2 and on PC VR. This is definitely on my to-buy list, and I'm really excited to try this game out. For those of you with a taste in older games, a game that I have played in the fantasy scope is Skyrim VR. I have way too many hours in flat screen Skyrim, so it was only natural that I get Skyrim VR Edition. I'll be honest though, the base Skyrim VR game absolutely sucks. It's thanks to VR mod creators such as Flying Particle and Shizoff that Skyrim VR could be an absolute beast. For those that are uninitiated or unfamiliar with modding their game, I urge you to either use Wabajack or Nexus Collections. Both of these services have curated mod packs for Skyrim VR, and that will make the experience of modding a lot smoother. These classics alone will give you thousands of hours in VR, as they have me. Oh, seriously? I have over 400 hours in Skyrim VR. Please help. I, however, encourage you to check out other creators for more games and such to look at, because I know that this list is really small and doesn't quite represent all the things that we have available to us in virtual reality. At the beginning of conceiving this video, I initially intended it to be a my thoughts on VR kind of video. It's greatly changed from this initial concept, and I've actually cut a lot of content out from this video. But I still kind of want to talk about VR and what I think about it. Honestly, from the time I was a small child, I dreamed of the day that I could be immersed in a video game in the way that virtual reality immerses me today. When I heard about a small tech startup by the name of Oculus, my 12-year-old self was absolutely ecstatic about that dream once more. And now, 10 years later, look at virtual reality. We as a community have grown greatly. The experiences available to us and the ability to be with somebody thousands of miles away as if they're literally in the same room, it's mind-boggling. Virtual reality to me represents so many things. It represents the future of entertainment. It represents the near limitless potential for all sorts of things. One day you could be exploring massive dark caverns in a block game, and an hour later you could be flying airplanes with your friends. Virtual reality is here, and it's here to stay, and I very much welcome it. If you made it this far, thank you for watching this video. If you wish to see more of this kind of content in the future, be sure to stick around. I have a lot more coming.